Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome back. It is Wednesday, July 24th. We're going to get a little bit of a different taste tonight. It's been a while, a minute or two, actually 10 months since we've had a chance to catch up with our guest today. She's a fan favorite nationwide for being an innovator and a leader and a mentor in how to, have civil discourse with the powers that be within our jurisdictions. And so we're going to hear a lot from Nadine Ness here in just a minute, but I wanted to make sure that everybody double checks their notification bells and make sure that you are subscribed. We are, amazingly enough, 3 nights in a row that we're allowed to stream on Facebook. And I honestly, guys, I have absolutely no explanation for this. They said no streaming for the last basically 3 months unless I got a government issued media credential that they could attach to my platform. But hey, we're here. We'll take advantage of it. Make sure that you're connected on Rumble as well as Substack. And so, without further ado, Miss Nadine Naz, thank you so much for finding some time to join us again here. It's been a while. Wow, you are a busy lady.
Yeah, yeah. I don't even know where to start to talk about what we've been up to, but um, I guess the last time we talked was the parental rights legislation passed in the province.
It was just in the beginning of that. So for folks that aren't familiar with you, uh, we kind of danced in similar circles for about 2 years and finally connected to do a show last August. So about that time, the Unified Grassroots was really becoming entrenched in what was going on in Saskatchewan and leading, kind of as a community representative for parents, and initially started with the beer bug insanity, but has developed into something so much more. So for folks that aren't familiar out there, tell them a little bit about Unified Grassroots and how this came to be, and kind of set the foundation for where you guys are going.
Yeah, so Unified Grassroots was founded, I guess, during COVID. So not right away when COVID came, but the year the passports came. So I think that was 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Sometimes I confuse the dates, the year. So basically, we were a group of parents that started overnight. I like to share the story because it's kind of a phenomenal story how it started. A lady on the town page close to where I live posted, "When's the next school board meeting?" And this was at a time where they hadn't announced yet what was coming to the school when it comes to mandate. They had already had mandates in the school the year before when COVID first came. They had said it wasn't coming again, but then she posted that. I'm thinking, did she hear something different? So I messaged her to see if we're on the same page. We couldn't talk about it. There's so many things we still can't talk about now, but it's getting much better because a lot more braver voices are coming forward. But you couldn't talk about it then. And so I messaged her, and it turns out we're on the same page. This was at a point where my husband was willing to come forward. He's a doctor, a family doctor in Saskatchewan, and we were personally affected by the mandates. My daughter, who had OCD and anxiety before COVID, you can just imagine what COVID did for her. And by the end of the school year, that first year, they deemed her medium to high risk for suicide. So when they said it was all coming back, I was like a mama bear. I'm like, no, you're not going to bring this to the schools. And so I messaged this girl. I said, hey, my husband and I are willing to come forward, do a presentation in front of the school board. We'll talk about the negative effects. And we have a decent sized house. I said, if any other parent reach out to you, we're willing to do a meeting at our house. And we live on a farm in the middle of nowhere. So description to get to our house is a little bit more complicated. So instead of her telling every parent how to get to our house, I said, hey, I'm going to start a private Facebook group. Just add the parents that reach out to you in there into that Facebook group. And then I explained how to get to my house, that the meeting was going to be on Saturday. Well, in 24 hours, we had 850 parents from our school division alone join that Facebook group. And that was word of mouth only. There wasn't an advertisement anywhere. People knew. I'm hearing an echo. Is that you or just me?
It's got to be on your end. There's, I'm not sure which microphone you're using. Your device might be using a device mic as well as the remote mic that you've got there.
We'll do this better. I'll put earphones in.
Well,
okay.
And,
yeah,
and
sorry about that.
it's okay. This is real. This is real, right? I mean, this is people getting together and having a discussion about things, and that's kind of all you were looking for. And I want to take a second here and expand on that a little bit, because that's all initially how it really started. Just you're trying to get together for communication, but I want people to understand where you come into this. This was hitting you in a lot of different directions. Some people, I mean, you mentioned your husband being a doctor. You were a former police officer. You've got kids, your parents. You've got farms, a farm. So all of these things would have been being impacted, not just one. So a lot of people may not understand, how deeply you were seeing this, and so that kind of really, to me, is inspiring that you're able to adapt so much to from where you started to where you are now. I think that plays a huge role in how you become kind of a leader and a voice trusted that's out there, because there isn't many out there.
No, unfortunately. Well, that's changing a bit. And like a lot of people might not know of the other side of it, where I was a bit more aware what was coming. So this was at a time the passport hadn't been announced yet. There was talks about it, but all government were saying no, it wasn't happening. So I was one of those rare few people that had a mask exemption. So I could still wear a face shield, but there's no doctors that wouldn't give it to me, because I had a fainting condition like that put me in a wheelchair. So at times in my life, I would faint so much I couldn't stand for more than a few minutes. If I got hot, I would faint. So heat around my face, around my neck would cause me to faint. Like even going into Walmart and that heat that blows down, I can't stay under that. I would faint. So because of that, I was one of those people that had a legit medical exemption. And what I faced during COVID, even before all of this, I saw how awful people were going to be. I was like pushed out of stores. I was swore at, yelled at, and I had a medical note, like a legit reason why I couldn't wear a mask. I would still wear a face shield, but that wasn't enough. So I knew when it came to a lot of people that were going to be pushed out, yelled at, laughed at, I knew that was coming when they announced the vaccine. And like everyone has their line. Some people were out there first Saturday when they announced the mandate, said, we can't lock down, we can't do that. Some people, that was their line. My line, I guess, where we said, okay, we're willing to risk it all, was when I knew it was going to really affect my daughter. I can take it. I can take the abuse. My husband could take the abuse. But when it comes to our kids, that was my line. And that's where we decided, okay, we're going to risk it all. And then, overnight, it was 850 parents. We ended up erasing my address quickly, because I realized it was growing so fast. I didn't want everyone to know where I lived. We ended up renting a hall, and then by then we had grown to 2,500, and that's just parents within our school division alone. And so we ended up having a town hall, and about 250 people came, and that's kind of where we found who was going to be on our board. That's kind of how our organization got formed. So we're a group of parents at our roots, parents that didn't have a say what was happening in the school, whether it was masking, whether it was the shots being kind of coerced on our kids, things like that. We were a group of parents that basically wanted to take charge of our education. And all of us were basically being stonewalled when it came to approaching the school boards and saying, hey, we're not okay with this. So when we started to become a big group, then when we approached them, we said, we'd like to do a presentation. They couldn't say no, because we represented 2,500 parents, and more likely 5,000, because most of it's usually not the husband and wife that join the groups, but usually they're on the same page. So
there's I want to highlight the importance of this, because now all of a sudden what you guys by circumstance created, whether anybody realized it or not, was exactly what needs to be done in order to regain control of our communities. Is because you guys created a voting block based on specific things that could bring people together towards a point of negotiation, which is point of all of this, and where I see people actually getting so frustrated with protesting. That's not a negotiation point. That's not where you start a negotiation. You took that immediately. That was something that I recognized immediately as you began from a position of negotiation rather than protest. And I think that's kind of the key to the civics. We're taking responsibility of our civic duty that's missing in so much of Canada, and people are grasping what can we do, what can we do, what can we do. But you guys have led by example just by bringing together community on a civic matter.
Yeah, and it's in order to understand, it's not that I'm against protests. Like, we participated in a convoy, but when you come to a protest, it's only one side speaking. So
Right.
you can't have those back and forth conversations. So when we went to the school board, we didn't just do like a presentation where we spoke what we thought. We challenged them to say, these are the changes we would like to see. Is this something you guys can do? We actually brought their own policy and legislation and used it to say, hey, you're not following this. This is what it says in the Saskatchewan Education Act. And sometimes some of the most powerful thing is to remind people what their job is and who they report to. Like, they are elected officials. They report to the public, not to third-party organization, LGBTQ activist organization, or unions. Like, unions represent the teacher. Now, the school board is supposed to be the voice of the public and the parents. So we kind of reminded them of that. And not only that, we got them to hear what was actually happening. We had 250 parents who did letters with their children talking about the negative effects it was having on their kids. We demanded that they do a survey on the school children to see if this was actually hurting them more than helping them. And one of the things that came out of that survey was really, really damaging to what the school was doing is they asked the question to the kids, do you have an adult in the school that you trust? And it was a ridiculously low amount. I think it was either 10% or 5% said they had an adult in the school that they trust. And that's not how it used to be. So it had damaged so much trust in the kids. So those were some of the stuff that we did. And then we realized that's way more effective than if we had just showed up at the school board and had a massive protest. They actually got to hear, they got to realize, okay, we have a group now that's gaining momentum, that's getting really big, that's going to hold us accountable. Like, they're afraid anytime we bring up anything to do with the school board. And to be honest, I think they're afraid about this fall when the election happens, because they know we're activating the masses, and it wouldn't shock me if we were to have a full sweep into that specific school division with trustees. So, and I can get into talking about kind of
You're so many reminders for of little things that can't get lost in all of this, because a big key to all of this is understanding, and the people that have a right to be upset, have a right to ask questions. They still have to do this from a perspective of realizing that it's the policy and the position that we have to challenge, not the individuals. We cannot make it about the individuals. If they're not going to hear us, then they have to be reminded that they can be replaced, and we are still going to challenge the policy. And that takes away so much of the negativity, and to diffuse things so that you can actually get to the point of having discussion. And again, this is you guys, I get, whether you realize it or not, Nadine, are writing the textbook how to take back your civics through this. And this is exactly what people need to understand to feel less frustrated, I think. So don't underestimate these points. They're massive.
Oh, yeah. And I'll give you a small example of policy that a lot of people don't know. So this is specific to Saskatchewan. Manitoba might have or other provinces might have similar one, but we were looking, I'm a digger. I used to work for federal government before I became an RCMP, so I know legislation. I know how it gets implemented. I've worked on almost every federal program that has happened when I worked for Service Canada. So this, I like doing this. I like finding the nuggets. And one of the things we found is if you had 20 people sign together, come together that they want to have a meeting with the school board has to do that meeting. So it's actually in the school board legislation, so not the Saskatchewan Education Act. So all the school boards that are saying, no, we're not going to give you time to do a presentation, all you need is 20 parents within your school division to sign this form and demand a meeting, and they can't say no, and they have to attend. And the funny thing about those meetings is they're not the ones who are in charge. They're not the one who control the discussion, the time. You chair that meeting. And that's actually in the legislation. So if we were hitting like walls, we're like, okay, let's dig deeper. And the thing is, they don't want you doing that because that's how you hold them accountable. There's a reason these are in there. So it's one of the things that we did as an organization. Let's find out what we're working with. And that's kind of, I'm going to move into, you have a lot of people saying, right, we don't like our government. We don't like I'm going to focus a lot on school boards, but I think that Canadians need to know this. We have way too many Canadians who don't know how our government works.
Correct.
So they will contact their MLAs and say, it's not going anywhere. But there are situations where you can have really massive influence into your elected officials. And that's one of the things we've been doing town halls to explain that to people. There's more than just calling your MLA. Or I think that's what you guys have it called in the province too. In Ontario, it's MPP, but in Saskatchewan, your provincial elected official is an MLA. So this is a bit dry, but it's so important people know. Each MLA has a board. So this board kind of governs fundraising for the candidate. They meet every month to 2 months with the candidate to discuss political strategy. They're also the ones who give the information for on the ground to the MLA candidate to bring back to the party. So each party has that. Even if you have a party that's not currently in power, that area, they're called constituency boards. That area will have a board. So you can join that board at any point in time. All you have to do is show up at the AGM and say you're interested, and there's a vote. Now, this is where it's really important for people to know. Those board election, only about 10 people show up.
Wow.
So you could basically take over the entire board by having your family and friends. Most people who show up at these meetings are the family and friends of the current elected officials. They want their closest people to be in charge of this board. Now, this board also gets to say provincially what direction the party's going to go. They're the ones who decide what policy priorities the party's going to have. They're the ones who decide, like, let's say they're not happy with the leader, they can actually set up a meeting and say, we're going to have a leadership review at any point in time if you have majority of the boards. So it's one of the things we've educated people on. Now, there's another thing that's so important for people to know. There's the general election, which happens every 4 years, I believe, in provincially, federally around the same time. So that's for provincial. Right now, if you have a currently sitting MLA, before the election happens, the year before, there's a nomination that happens. So an MLA who's sitting will say, I'm going to stay on or I'm going to step down. You as the general public can actually challenge the sitting MLA and run against them. And then there's an election that happens party-wise within that district. So if you don't like your MLA, and a lot of people don't like your MLA, you can actually step forward and say, I'm going to run against him to be on the next ballot. So my current MLA, that actually happened. So I have Randy Weeks, and a lot of people weren't happy with him. So a guy challenged him, and Randy Weeks lost. So he's currently sitting MLA, but in the fall, he's not on the ballot, someone else. Now, those elections I need you guys to understand how important it is. Those elections, if you compare to the US, would be called the primaries. So in the primaries, when you hear of a governor running for election in the primaries, it determines that they're going to be the one on the ballot at the general election. In the US, 40% of the population vote in those elections. 40%. We call them the nomination election. Most Canadians don't even know about it. Less than 0.1% of the population vote in those elections. So
Wow.
sometimes it's a matter of 100, 200 people choosing who your provincial elected official is going to be, especially if it's a riding that's always going to go NDP or always going to go, let's say, Sask Party for Saskatchewan. I think you guys have, is it Conservative in Manitoba? What's the name of the Conservative Party? Or is there more than one?
It's been a minute since we talked. I'm now based in Ontario, so
Oh,
I'm
so you're in Ontario now. Okay, so Ontario has like the United Party, I think, or they have quite a few there.
they have the New Democrats have primarily run Ontario until the Ford
Yeah.
dynasty. Yes, so and they're
So
all pseudo something or another. They call themselves something, but what they are is different. But yeah, it's different. But I wanted to not forget this one point. This constituency board that you spoke of.
mhm,
Uh, this is the second time that this has come up in completely different context with different guests now, and I think that like you were saying, only 1% of the people take part in this process. I think we really don't understand the power that we have
mhm,
going to these constituency boards, and this is how we are able to literally get things to the provincial level, particularly
mhm.
like too sweet.
Yeah. So the board can give you, I guess, a really big influence within the party. So
Right,
you get to decide kind of which policy gets put forward at the AGM that gets voted every year. So I'll give a really good example of this. Take Back Alberta was working really hard on this. So that's how they got rid of Jason Kenney.
right.
They all joined these constituency board, got majority in the party, called for a leadership review because they had the majority. It couldn't be stopped, and then they did a vote, and Jason Kenney was out. So to be honest, those boards only about 10 to 15 people show up to vote, and even if even if they know you're about to come, they usually can't pull that many people to show up to those board meetings. So we've been encouraging people to buy membership. So in order to vote for that, you have to have a party membership. So when I'm telling you this, I'm using Sask Party as an example because that's most likely the one to be in power. But your area might actually be NDP. You can actually do this as well in the NDP. The numbers will likely be even lower if it's NDP. But yeah, about 15 people usually is what it takes. So and then you join the board. You can join every position on the board. You can have someone run for all. In Saskatchewan, the really important one is the delegate. So the delegate can be any other position on the board. It's just the one that's chosen as the delegate. So the funny thing is, I won't get into these kinds of details, but we've been teaching people about it and they've been showing up, which is really phenomenal. But I
I,
won't get into more details about that. So
I want to pause you there for a second. You're giving me so much to chew on, and
mhm,
with regards to this, I've intentionally been using the word civics a lot more, but this the for the single sole purpose of people to understand the power of voting blocks, whether it's at the provincial level for your MLAs or your school boards or your mayors. If we can find points of to have a reasonable demand for negotiation and process, this is how we assemble a voting bloc, and the sky is the limit. If we truly want change, we need to come together on a few specific points and appropriately create a voting bloc. There to address those things, and engaging in tactical civics is the term that I've been using for this here lately, and you're showing us, and this is what I want the whole world to see. So make sure you share this out, guys. Is you guys are embodying that. You guys have had success with this now, and you guys have evolved and are still continuing to grow. Correct?
Yeah, yeah. So I want to stress one point though that I think is important for people to know. Like a lot of people say the government doesn't represent us. It's like an old boys club. No gender pun intended, but that's the saying. It's an old boys club. It's someone the usually the next MLA candidate is someone the first one knew. They're buddies. So it's always people who know people that end up going in those positions because those are the only people who know about these elections. So if we were to change that Canada wide and people knew, hey, even if your MLA is currently sitting, you can challenge them, you had every nomination be challenged every election. But people don't know about it. It's a small, it's 0.1%. So not 1%, 0.1.
It is George Carlin. Is it's a big club and we ain't in it. And I disagree. You guys are. We use this term democracy an awful
Mhm.
lot. People use this term so loosely. It's intentionally, I think, but it's come to the point where it means absolutely nothing to most people. It's just a filler word at this point. And the actual act of democracy is engaging in civics, which people
Mhm.
have absolutely no concept of at this point anymore. I don't know when it was dropped from school. It was gone even basically, I think, when I got to high school. So these are the things that we have far more ability and opportunity to address things than we really realize, I think, and it's so refreshing for people to get from time to time a reminder of democracy does still work, but only works if we take part,
Mhm.
and that is the biggest thing I think that gets we Canadians kind of have been sucked into this a lullaby where if somebody else looks like they're going to do it, then we don't have to. And that is the danger, the sleepy zone that has allowed these people to get, like you said, without participation, these guys get what they want. And when they do get participation, it's primarily from their friends, family, their loyal
Mhm.
supporters. For me, the slap in the face for that was when I covered several of Jason Kenney's Fair Deal panels that he held in Alberta while he was still in power. And the thing that I noticed is that all of the seats were booked by staffers.
Mhm. No, it is it's such a small world with it, and I'm noticing that as I'm getting more involved and like going to like I was in at Stampede, I went to a bunch of political event, and it's funny because some of these people I've met already, but it's such a small world, and it's funny you say we Canadians have been complacent, we haven't participating. I want to correct that a little bit. It's not all Canadians that
Correct.
have been complacent. There is a group that does this type of education on a massive level. Those are LGBTQ activists, organization, woke agenda pushing the climate change activists. You have also the unions. They all do education on people on this, and that's why you're noticing all of these organizations have basically taken over the lower level of our like cities, our school board election, because they all organize their people and they all teach them when to show up, where to show up. They send massive emails. They'll send an email, who wants to door knock, and they get 100 people. Well, the
Right.
problem is on the right, we don't have that until
I,
now.
I stand happily corrected because
Yeah.
you're absolutely right on that. These guys have generationally handed it down exactly how to
Mhm.
weaponize civics, and kept it in the family, like our parents used to teach us. We lost that on the conservative side of the fence. We're typically hardwired to head down, bum up, and work harder for what we've got, and not to take part in those kinds of things because we don't really see that as having an impact on us. And that, I guess, from our side of the fence is where we're really having to play catch up in the last couple of years. But exactly what you described there is 100% on point, and that process has been decades where
Oh yeah.
the progressive Marxist left has weaponized civics, and they have created almost a closed loop from idea, concept to policy and budgets. We've seen that repeatedly through the C40.orgs, the 350.orgs, where they will put out a policy idea and only open the door to their little exactly that, those little segregate, compartmentalized communities, and they'll get enough consent there, and they have used civics to their advantage, and oh boom, we've got a carbon policy. Wait, where'd that come from? And that's exactly how they've done it through organizations like that. So that is such a huge point, and we have dropped the ball in an understanding of how they've weaponized exactly these civics against us, and we're seeing people that are starting to embrace it through fortitude and a stick to itiveness, I guess. Yourself there in your organization, we're seeing it now with Maggie Braun and the Kickley organizations and other ones that are learning to dissect the word salad from the gaslighting and deal with it directly. So yeah, huge point. Thank you for that. I think that's something I'm going to have to clip out. I don't. I
Into a
get.
short of it. Yeah. It's funny because like I'm aware of these things. I don't know if you know this, Wayne, but I used to be on the left. So I knew how they organized. And when I became a conservative or a right-leaning person, I'm like, oh my gosh, no wonder we're losing everything. We don't know how to organize. We all internally fight. Like we saw like a big example of that. We saw that even just with the freedom movement.
Yeah.
You have people doing different things, which is great. We need pressure on all sides, but then they just attack each other instead of just saying, hey, this is what we're doing. You keep doing that. We're just going to keep walking in that direction of freedom. And but it's one of those things that you notice that a lot on the right. We're less organized. We don't have the funding because we don't get to have government grants like the leftist activists. They get all of the government funding. And then on top of that, they have the unions, which are a big machine. So when you have organization or even people groups like yours or like unified grassroots coming together, it's even hard for us to get funding and support in order to be able to counter that narrative. But right now we're working with what we've got and we're accomplishing a lot of things. I just want to say we're one of the biggest places where we haven't stepped up is school board. So I don't know if it's like this in Manitoba, but in Saskatchewan, most of the school board trustee position got in by acclamation, which means it never went to a vote. There's only one person who put their name forward, and then no one challenged them, and they became the trustee. So a lot of the positions in Saskatchewan with trustees, exactly that. So what we decided to do is actually challenge every single trustee that we know is completely opposite to our values. And we're going to run people in. So there's going to be more school board election in Saskatchewan this year than there probably has ever been, because we're hoping to challenge every single one of those. And we're hoping to win a lot of those. And I say we, it's not me, it's not our organization that's running candidates. It's just we're teaching people how to apply, how to put your name forward, what it's going to look like. We're giving them an idea what it's like to be a school board trustee. Actually, we have one of our board members that is a school board trustee as well. So we get to kind of figure out how to structure work and stuff. And then we're going to hopefully train them on how to run a campaign. So we're bringing in kind of industry experts, and we're also teaming up. There's groups in the US that has been doing that as well. So that's specific to school boards. So we're bringing those people in as well to teach us what worked, what didn't work, and stuff. So we're hoping to run 100, and I say it's not us running. We're hoping to help support 100 candidates run for school board. So, and we've kind of identified the ones we don't need to challenge. So the ones that are already on our side. So now we're working on challenging the ones that are pushing this woke agenda in school. And then once they get elected, we're hoping to train them on what their duties and powers actually are, so that when they get told by administration, you can't, sorry, I have fruit fly, you can't do this, they're going to be like, no, this is what the Education Act is. Because the Saskatchewan Education Act says a school board trustee can ban books from school.
Wow.
But all of them are saying this is not our jurisdiction. Administration is saying this is out of your hands. And then the insuring body that trains the school board, the SSBA it's called, they're telling them you can't do that, but that's not what the legislation says. So we're going to train the candidates on what is actually in this legislation, and hopefully have a huge influence into making our schools better, getting that garbage out and bringing back the basics. So yeah.
I'm not sure if you've heard about what's going on in the York, one of the York school board areas, where they've just done exactly what you guys are hoping, or seeing this groundswell, I guess, of support with this idea and concept. People, 100 people would make a significant, massive impact on all of these agendas that are being implemented in the school, that are really only there because there was no resistance to them for the longest time. People were deceived as to what was really going on in there. So it's again, these are the things that we can duplicate across the country so reasonably, without getting locked into the nonsense of it. And I think that people are very frustrated out there and feel like their hands are tied, and that kind of drives that despondency, that demoralization, that typically when people are like that, they're looking for a wedge issue, because they really have it in their mindset that when they open their eyes in the morning, they got to fight, and they got to fight everything that lands in front of them. And that's where we can find those kinds of things all the time, but I always want to challenge people. What is the one thing that we can find to agree on, and that's go from there. And when it comes to children and what's going on with this woke liberal mind virus, to be politically correct, that will probably get me won't probably get me banned off of YouTube yet, but that's really the simplicity of it. There's no easy button. It's going to take work, and it's going to take grind, but most of all, it's going to take not just being aware and frustrated, but being aware and engaged. And there is a path through that, and you guys are teaching people. So that's the important part is we need teachers teaching people all over the place. So I really I'm gonna pop Nadine's Twitter account into the chat here for everybody while we're chatting here, but just to
To see where I let loose.
well, I have to fess up. Yeah, I am kind of a different person on Twitter than I am even in real life. It's just really hard not to be on Twitter that way. I don't take myself too seriously, but I definitely tend to poke any bear or anything that needs to be called out. I will tackle it in no uncertain terms, and not necessarily with the most grace, but that's kind of the nature of it. If Twitter disappears on me, so be it. They preach free speech. Well, I'm going to exercise it. So yeah, I've dropped your Twitter account, or X, whatever people want to go by with it, and there to at least start paying attention and taking notes, I'm sure that they can reach out to you. I know that you guys are underway with a lot of different stuff, and you want to be really careful because absolutely we're being watched, we are being monitored. This platform is often a benchmark for those people that are trying to oppose us. They know they don't have the actual numbers, they've just had the system gamed for a very long time. So they want to know what we're up to, and they pay attention to what we are talking about when we're talking with people that have substance, meat, and value, and most of all, information to expand on. So I hope I didn't give anything away there, but I did
No.
to know that Nadine is not just a happy chatter on our channel here tonight, and I'm very grateful for that. But you guys are really busy doing different stuff. So without giving anything away, give people a good reason why they should come and follow you on
On
Twitter.
Twitter.
Up.
Well, because we're one of the biggest organization, I hate selling it, but I mean, most people probably who are on our same page probably have seen some of our tweets go insane viral. So because we're one of the biggest organization, we're one of the hubs where people who go to the media don't get heard when it comes to conservative issues. So we're one of the hubs where people come to us for help on a constant basis. If people only knew the amount of people that I help in the background that never even makes it to light, I will only ever bring a story to light if the person has said, yes, I think you should. And if I know I can protect the children, where it's not going to come forward which children were affected and stuff. So, but we help a lot of people. And because of that, we hear about a lot of the controversial stuff that happens in schools. So our platform, I guess my Twitter account, is where I share a lot of that. So if you go into the highlights of my Twitter account, I've put in there kind of some of the most kind of controversial or scandal. It's not even controversial. It's the only controversial part of it is that the government has actually done these things. So whether it's the school or social services or some of these, I guess, governmental organization or whatever you want to call it. So in the highlight is where you'll see a lot of that. And that's kind of where we've been able to grow our influence, because we get a greater reach as an organization than all of mainstream media combined. So when we put out a campaign or a story, it usually reaches hundreds of thousands of people, and the government knows that. So when I have a specific scandal that's brewing, I will usually contact the ministry and say, hey, what's happening here? And they panic. So they usually try to deal with it before it even makes it public, so that they don't get the negative press. So yeah, so you see a lot of, like I talk about a lot of what's happening in, like this particular tweet is the labor unions in Saskatchewan, not the Teachers Federation, but the labor union, the Canadian Teachers Federation, and another union, CUPE, has joined in the lawsuit against the provincial government over the parental rights bill. So I'm talking about here, I say the same people who are screaming that trans kids are at increased risk of suicide want to keep that information from you as a parent. How could this possibly go wrong, right? As someone who had a child who struggled with suicide ideation, imagine if the school had kept it secret from me. Like, so we talk about a lot of this stuff, and I come from a different background too. Your listeners may not know this, but not only was I a former police officer, I'm specifically trained to profile sex offenders, child sex offenders, so pedophiles. So I've done a lot of research and study into pedophile activists and where we can find glimpse of that type of activism happening in Canada. So if you go on my Twitter profile, there's a pinned video. If you haven't seen it, watch it. I think it's on the main page. I also brag about my husband a lot on Twitter. So for those, I'm one of those women who has a really great husband. But Yeah, so Planned Parenthood and its affiliated partners in school agenda exposed. So that one, I did a deep dive into some of these third party organization that was trying to revamp sexual education across Canada, and they have very nefarious links. And I didn't just say they do. I brought receipts, and I like this is what I was trained for when I was trained to profile child sex offenders. So we did that video and it went insanely viral. And then all these third party organizations were banned from the schools the following week, which was really phenomenal. So, but they need to be banned all across Canada.
I want to touch on something else here, just for a split second on that. And this is one of the reasons why I say that you are a force of nature, is your ability to understand the gaslighting and the astroturfing that is going on with this agenda against the children. Some formerly know of it as SOGI, but it is the to me, the most horrific abuse of power and weaponization of pseudoscience, and the most devastating, destructive thing that could ever befall our societies. This is the biggest part of it, and to me, I think something that to connect the dots on Planned Parenthood. You brought that up. Given what's going on in the United States with Kamala Harris being the newly anointed one, people needs to remember that it was her that prosecuted the journalists that were exposing Planned Parenthood for selling baby parts in the United States and buried the information and the case against Planned Parenthood. So that's something that has skated underneath the walls of justice for a long time, but this is ultimately the way to pull the carpet off of all of that. Is people need to understand where it has gotten to and the implementation and the effect and the impact and the devastation that it is wreaking on our youth. It's beyond comprehension. It's the worst. Stephen King couldn't begin to dream up the horrors that are being created for the children moving forward. We've got some other advocates that are fighting the fight of their lives in this right now to try and protect children from that. On the on the time frame of things, Nadine, we're getting down to the last 10 minutes here, and I want to make sure that you get everything else out there, but from the time of things where you started coming into this battle in 2020, and to me that was the masking abuse, with the psychological abuse, the trauma that was being inflicted. That's where I came in on this. I understood trauma. I understood breathing. I had been a breathing air specialist for 15 years, and nobody was going to tell me that there was science to support this abuse and this damage that was being done to our kids. So that was kind of where I came into all this, and recognizing the trauma being inflicted on the kids, just even from that. Now seeing the escalation of all of these things, all of these evils converging at the same time on this, from 4 years ago, 2020, to where we are now. How far do you think that we are down the progression of actually? I know that at the end of the day, I believe in my faith that God wins. I'm not saying anybody else needs to. It doesn't necessarily happen in our lifetime, but I'm expecting that it will. Your thoughts in that regard?
So I think like a lot of people, it like is like ebbs and flows. There's days I'm like, we've got this, and then other days where like you see like the attempt at Trump's assassination where you're like, all the systems are rigged. All of them are rigged against us. Or you see like media twisting. So there's times where I like, okay, we're losing this battle, but then I'm always reminded of what God is doing. And I don't know if all of your listeners are believers, but that's the only reason I do what I do, because I feel like God is telling me to do it, because nobody in their right mind would do all of this work full time for free. But so I think God is doing something and he's building something. Like the organization, it's not because I'm special that it became so big. It's not because I'm special that we were as effective as we were. Like each of the things that were really successful were things that I got from the Lord. Like the video that I did to Scott Moe that went insanely viral, that therefore, like during COVID, and then he called me back and then he did a 180 after a phone conversation. Like that wasn't anything I said special. Like I honestly believe God was working in so many different things. And while there's days where I'm like, okay, we're taking 2 steps forward or 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards. Now that I know how the system is built, I have a lot more hope. Now the question's going to be, are people going to step up, get off the couch and do something? That's where sometimes I get discouraged, because I can teach everyone where you can show up to make a difference, but sometimes I find people just don't. And so they don't until it's painful for them. But
Right.
I like during COVID, there's so many people just going with the flow until it really affected them and it got painful for them. And I think, to be honest, I think it has to get a little bit more painful for people to say, yeah, you know what, I'm going to show up. Maybe we're there with the school board. We're getting a ton of people messaging me. We're I think about around 40 out of the 100 so far kind of confirmed that are going to be running. So that's a huge number when you think about it. So maybe they will, but all I can say is if you think I don't have to do it because the other people will, someone's going to get off the couch, so I don't have to. 95% of the people think the exact same way those people are thinking. So nobody gets off the couch. And because of that, we're in this mess. So I'm hoping that more people get that kind of conviction from the Lord. Hey, you need to do something. It might get uncomfortable, but do something. The
Well,
way my husband and I did.
a couple of quick points on this. Something that really kind of triggered my thinking process the other day, and it was meant as a cynical comment, but somebody said that Canadians would find it easier to come out as being gay or transsexual than to come out as being a Trump supporter. And I think that that was a really profound thought, because I see the same thing, and they would probably do both of those before coming out and saying that they were led by faith in Christianity right now, because that will absolutely get you more persecuted than even being a Trump supporter. But I'm in the same situation. This is why I do what I do. I didn't dream about eating Kraft dinner 5 days a week. That's a byproduct of understanding that I cannot measure a victory by a changing of one butt in one seat. We have to change the system, and that is going to come on a different timeline than what we may want in our sense of immediate gratification and all of that. There is no easy button on this, and when we work from a position of doing of not fearing fellow man, but and not serving fellow man, but serving that higher power, then it becomes a whole lot less difficult to deal with, the changing in the the butts in the seats process, because that's just a temporary thing. And once we get organized through that and get people, um, you know, understanding the base of where they're coming from and being okay with that and moving forth with community and strength, and actually doing it with a system and understanding that's been stolen from us, I think that's an incredibly optimistic position compared to what was going through my mind in 2020, I'll tell you.
and like part of it too is people are afraid to speak up because they don't know how to do it in a way that won't be canceled or won't be. For example, I'll give you a perfect example of this. The whole Trump situation. I will just say what happened on July 13th changed people's confidence. You're seeing so many more people confident coming
Yep.
forward and saying, you know what? I want Trump to be back in power. So sometimes it's equipping them with how to say it, because Trump can be like arrogant, prideful, very crass. He says dumb things all the time. Do they twist it? Yes. But he's not like a super right away champion of a likable person. But he's exactly what America needs. So this is my opinion. People can disagree with me or not, because he's feared by world leaders across the world. So if the US is going to be the peacemaker across the world, they need a leader that people like Putin, people like I don't remember his name, China. How do you say Xi Jinping?
Xi Jinping.
Xi Jinping. You need people who will look at Trump and be like, yeah, he's someone I don't want to mess with. They don't look at Biden and think that. So or they won't look at Kamala and think that, right? So equipping people with how to respond. Say, okay, who do you think will take us out of a World War III?
I think that's the most point that we can close this off with is, I think about this often too, whether people agree with me or not, doesn't matter. We're all allowed to think. Mm-hmm. I would never hang out with Trump. I didn't like the man on his show. I didn't follow anything, but is he the right man for the job? He's the only damn man for the job. And we don't always necessarily have to like the right person for the right job. So if we can get over ourselves a little bit and get the right job done by putting that to the task, and forget all of the he said, she said nonsense gobbledygook. If it doesn't matter in 5 days, 5 months, 5 years, don't waste your time on it, and find somebody that's doing the right thing. And whether you like them or not, let's put it together into something effective, because this is the year. This is the year it has to happen this year. I believe this is the only year that they're all going to be susceptible to what you guys are doing and what everybody else needs to be doing. If they, I hear people all the time, what can we do? What can we do? This whole hour has been exactly about what you can do, and that if you learn how to do it on a small scale, there is absolutely no reason that we can't do it on the larger scale. And this goal of having 100 people, I think that's such an achievable objective that every province should easily be able to come together on. And if half of the provinces were able to do that, we would solve the entire country, I think, following up on that. So it is really that simple. It's just not easy.
See, I will end with one last point. The woke agenda pushing left have been working on this for 20 years.
Yep.
But we have to remember they're a very small minority. We are the majority. There's about 80% of the population that feels just like us. We just need to activate them. So what it took the woke left, 10, 20 years to do, we can probably do it in 2 or 3 years.
100%.
But we just need to know when and where to show up. And right now we're just focused on Saskatchewan because we have an election happening. We were hoping other groups would kind of sprout in other places in Canada and just do what we're doing. If that's not happening soon enough, we may expand, because a lot of the issues that we're facing too are federal. So unless we have other groups who are doing what we're doing at the federal level, we'll always come up to a wall. So, but so far it's mostly Saskatchewan. Will we expand? Maybe, I don't know. but anyways, for your viewers, because I think they're all over Canada.
They are North America, and even outside of the country, we've got a lot of people that are plugged in here, and that's it's really easy to spend all of our time focusing on the problems. I don't think that there's enough time spent on effective solutions and people that are actually bearing fruit for their work and their efforts. So it's been a real pleasure to have you come on here and inspire and educate so many people. And I hope that your message box is full with people looking to organize. I know that there are little micro communities dotted all across this country that are looking for, they've got the people together. They just need the how-to manual. And I hope that reach out to you for a little bit of advice and experience and counseling on that, because again, you are the force of nature, whether you need it or not. Canada needs you, Nadine. So thank you so very, very much from the bottom of my heart and our community for being such a strength, a pillar of strength and inspiration for us all.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks for having me on your show too.
Well, we'll have to not wait a year. So
Yeah.
time you get some good news, like I know you got some big stuff going on. So when you got some big news, I'm going to hold you to sharing it with us here first across the country. So
When the election, the school board election happens, then I'll come back and I'll share the success story.
do you have a date for that by any chance? Like when is this happening?
Yeah, I
Ballpark?
had it. It's in November, I think November 6th, but I'm just gonna see if I added it to my phone. We also have provincial election too. Remember how I talked about the nomination election? We actually have a lot of our people who won the nomination election for the SAS party in rural riding. So we have our people who will most likely to be elected in next government. So, but we won't go too much in those details. We're not disclosing who they are because we don't want to target on them. So
I got what I needed out of that. More good news, and I got to know that we're not going to be 10 months before we get you back on again sometime in November. I'll be reaching out and saying, hey,
I think
Nadine.
it's the 6th, but I'm not sure. And you can get in trouble if you give the wrong information. So don't hold me to the 6th.
we will,
Okay.
we will, but we'll see you again real soon, Nadine. Thanks so much.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
I, that was a joy. I hope that you guys got as much out of that as I did. You know, there's so many things that sometimes we need to just come back and revisit from time to time. And when we talk about it again a little while later, there's more that we've learned, more that we're able to do. And I'm inspired by people like Nadine and what they're doing out there. So it was a pleasure to be able um, to bring her to you guys for an update. If you guys have more questions or more information that you would like to reach out to me, this is the email address that is best to do that, and I will get back to you as soon as I possibly can. And of course, Substack comes out the next morning. After everything that we talk about the night before is in the Substack, including links, and whenever we have information like documents to share, that's a good place to do that. It is always a good time to buy me a coffee. I live on caffeine and craft dinner most of the time, and I really encourage people to support independent journalism. These, whether it's me or not, it's people that are have earned their way, that are becoming trusted out there, that are essential to communicating the different initiatives and keeping people plugged in and not so demoralized. And you guys are making a huge difference. And if this is the journalism platform that you, or let me say the authentic media platform that you support, that is the very best way to do that. I do have one more little thing to share with you guys before I close out and let you guys all go. On Saturday, we're having a little get together where we're going to be digging into some different civics opportunities. I will drop the link in the chat for everybody for this as well. This is by registration only. This is not going to be streamed, probably won't be recorded either. But we're going to talk about some of the other stuff that we are doing behind the scenes that is community oriented in order to take the power away from the people that are trying to ruin our countries. So I'm going to drop the link for that. You guys can register there. I know this is kind of short notice, but adapt, improvise, and overcome is the nature of what we do here. This is Guerrilla Journalism 101. And yeah, so I'll drop it in here finally. Last one. And with that, think that's everything covered. I hope you guys all have an amazing day, and we will see you tomorrow. More crime, corruption, and pulling the carpets off of the dark side, guys. Tomorrow, 6 p.m. Central, regular as clockwork. Oh, yes, tomorrow afternoon, 3 p.m. Eastern. Tune into Jim Ferguson, where he has kindly extended an invitation for me to compare notes for his community in Europe. So I'll be talking about so much of the stuff that we talk about here on this platform firsthand to the European communities and try and get some of them to plug into what we're doing over here as well. So bridging continents, bridging nations, that takes place at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Otherwise, we will see you for more from Clown World and the implosion of our charade of pseudo management teams in Canada. So see you tomorrow.